We have saved the best for last. Yes. So Lauren and I go way back. We used to do grassroots activism, protest in the streets for many years ago in the 90s. Feels like forever ago now. So we've been doing this work for a very long time, and I am such an admirer of the wonderful, amazing organization that she has built in Food Empowerment Project. All of their projects are critical, so important, so unique to the animal advocacy space, and so needed. So I'm really, really so honored that she was able to come and join us today. So I will read her bio. Lauren has been deeply involved in animal rights activism since 1987 and is the founder and senior programs director of Food Empowerment Project. Food Empowerment Project is a food justice group, food justice nonprofit that promotes veganism, champions for the rights of farm workers, highlights the lack of access to healthy food in Black and Brown communities, and raises awareness about the worst forms of slavery, including child labor in the chocolate industry. Lauren has a wonderful TEDx talk that you can see called The Power of Our Food Choices, and I am so honored she is here today. Please welcome Lauren Ornelas.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for being here. And Hope, thank you for organizing this from so far away. So I have a couple of changes to my title, which I'll talk about momentarily. But yeah, I'm with Food Empowerment Project. We're 17 years old this year. And as part of moving on, so to speak, it worked a second ago. Thank you. Food Empowerment Project became a collective. This is starting to use a collective model. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, I founded the organization, again, 17 years ago. And through that time period, we've evolved. And we've evolved in an organization which truly meets in what I believe in and what I stand for, and that's a non-hierarchical organization. An organization where everybody in the organization has an equal voice and an equal say in everything that's done. We no longer I've removed myself from the board of the organization because it wouldn't make sense for me to be on the board and still say I'm equal with everybody. So our organization, we hope more will follow this. But we believe this is the path forward if we truly want a more equitable and just society, is that everybody has an equal say in what their futures are and what it is that they do. And I'm very excited. So my title is now founder, because can't get away from that one, and general programs collective member. So all of us. So Alejandra, my colleague in the back, even though I've been doing this for 17 years, is now my equal, and she likes that power that she now has as my kind of boss too. But we really hope that other organizations will consider this type of structure that we believe very much is in alignment with the type of work that we do and what we're looking for in this world. So my talk today is really going to be talking about racism, capitalism, and in some regards all the isms in the food movement and food industry. And one of the reasons why is because when you have a food system that includes racism, discrimination, capitalism, exploitation, and exploitation is human and non-human animals, you're going to have a pretty rotten food system. When you have a food system that is more based on justice, compassion, and dignity for everybody and liberation, that's truly what a more healthy food system is like. You can't think you can create healthy food if it's at the exploitation of somebody else, rather that somebody be human or non-human. And unfortunately, our food system is riddled with all of these negativisms from when the seed is planted to when it's harvested to when it gets on our plates. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about a bit today. I'm going to show you basically what you all have heard today. I know has been a lot about veganism. And this is my bunny, Benito. He is named after Benito Juarez, who was the first indigenous president of Mexico. And Benito was found, my husband and I found him on the streets of downtown San Jose. And so we brought this little love into our lives. And for me, the reason why I'm showing Benito is not only because he gives me confidence when I get nervous, but also because he embodies everything about why Food Empowerment Project is a vegan organization. And that's because Benito has a right to his fur without anybody needing to worry about anybody using his fur to keep warm. He has a right to his eyes and his skin without having to worry about anybody test cosmetics or household products on him or in him. And he has a right to his flesh without having to worry about anybody wanting to consume him. He has a right to his own life, his own body, joy that he feels. Binkies, if he wants to binky, for those of you who know bunny rabbits. That he has these things, he has this life, and that's not different than any other non-human animal. That goes to the shrimp in the ocean, to the fishes in the sea, to obviously chickens and all sorts of animals, that they have a right to their own bodies. They have a right to not have to worry about pain and suffering at the hands of human animals. So we are, first and foremost, we're very much a vegan organization. I always want to make sure to talk about cows when I'm up in this area, because we have what are so-called happy cows up in Marin and Sonoma County, and we know that can't be further from the truth. These animals, no matter what, the mamas have their babies separated from them at birth. We actually, my organization, I'll talk about it later, we're having an anti-dairy seminar later on this month, and we did speak to a dairy worker who talked about how hard it was because his job was separating from the moms from the babies, and how he just couldn't imagine what it was like for her, and how they had to put so much equipment in between the mom and the baby because the mom would fight so hard to be with her baby. So again, happy cows or not, first of all, that's not where the vast majority of milk is coming from that people consume. It's coming from the Central Valley. But even in these green hills, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if these moms and these babies are separated. There's suffering inherent. These are moms who have babies in them for 9 months, just like a human would. And here they have their babies taken away all so that people can consume her milk. So as a vegan organization, when we talk about a food system that's free of the isms, exploitation, when we talk about non-human animals, is really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about a deep sense that we have the right to do whatever we want to do to non-human animals because we can't communicate with them in a certain way. But we still do the same thing to human animals in the food system. And that's something that we at Food Empowerment Project feel very strongly that we as vegans need to be thinking about and talking about as well, or if we don't want to work on it, at least not ignore these issues. So one of the things that we talk about is environmental racism. Environmental racism is basically when Black, brown, indigenous communities are more impacted by negative pollutants than, say, whiter, more affluent areas are. And you have these issues with, let's see, this is a picture of a dairy farm in the Central Valley. This is about 17,000 cows. So if you consider that one dairy cow produces 120 pounds of wet manure per cow per day, that's an extraordinary amount of waste that these cows are leaving behind and impacting the community. And the vast majority of people who live in the Central Valley are Latinx. And they have some of the highest rates of asthma in the country because of the dairy industry. It's a similar situation if you look at pig farms in North Carolina. North Carolina is the second largest pig killing state in the US, where you have Black and indigenous people who live in these areas who basically can't live their lives. The smell is so bad from these farms, they can't open the windows, the flies are really bad. Their property value is down because no one wants to live near one of these facilities. And all of this is because of the mass desire to consume non-human animals. But again, when we look at the food system, we look at who is responsible for really everything that we eat, unless you eat food that comes out of your own garden. We have farm workers to thank. And that's vegans and non-vegans. Anybody who eats produce, unless you're growing it yourself, has a farm worker to thank for everything that you eat. And here in California, they live deplorable lives, disrespected lives. When we talk about dignity, they work without being treated with a modicum of dignity for all the work that they do. They live in cardboard boxes, actually right in Napa. They live in cardboard boxes. They live along the rivers. Even though they pick the grapes for the wines, they live outside. You have farm workers who live in substandard housing. You have them who live in their pickup trucks. They get, wage theft. I'm sure if you live in Sonoma County, I'm sure you've heard about a lot of the wage theft victories that have happened because wage theft is so prevalent that the workers are finally fighting back and getting back pay for when they get their wages stolen. Sexual harassment is rampant. And you have issues like heat. When these heat waves happen here in California, it's not as if the farm workers get a day off. They still have to pick the food for us. They're still out there, and a lot of people have died. A lot of farm workers have died, not even just in California and Georgia. Farm workers are dying. When we talk about the climate crisis, we always have to remember that farm workers are also impacted by what's happening. When the droughts were going on, farm workers were heavily impacted by how dusty it was and the fact they would inhale that dust. The Coalition of Immokalee Workers, I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, but they are a farm worker organization based in Florida. And what they've been asking for is Wendy's and a grocery store chain in the southeast called Publix to pay the farm workers 1 penny more per pound for the tomatoes that they pick. And although that may not seem like a lot of money, it's just 1 penny more per pound, that has proven to have an impact on the lives of the farm workers. 1 penny more per pound has had a profound difference on their lives, and that's why they're asking for it. But yet companies like Wendy's are refusing it to give it to them. Currently, Food Empowerment Project is in the middle of our school supply drive for the children of farm workers. And we do this work not as an act of charity. We do this work as a way to help right an injustice that's taking place. So what we do is we used to collect school supplies, but we stopped doing that. Now we collect donations, and we go out and we buy the backpacks and the school supplies, and we give them to the children of farm workers. This year, they're going to be going actually to high school students who are also farm workers who live in the Central Valley, as well as pre-K, actually babies through high school in a town called Santa Maria. I'm really excited because I don't know if any of you have seen the movie called Million Miles Away, which is about Jose Hernandez, who is the former child farm worker who's now an astronaut. But we have secured a quote from him to put a quote from him in every single backpack for the students. So we're really excited to get his support. Thank you. We also have a bill right now at the Capitol called AB 2240. And if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me talk about this before, but in California, we have about 24 labor camps. And in the labor camps, when the picking season is over, the farm workers are required to leave and move 50 miles away from that labor camp, which let's put it this way, in the Watsonville area, near Santa Cruz, the picking season doesn't start until like May. So the kids aren't allowed to start school until May. And school ends in June. And then they have to leave when the picking season over, which is in November. So they can't finish the school year. So we've been working for over 10 years on this, and now we finally have a bill at the Capitol that would allow farm workers to live in these labor camps year-round so their children can finish the school year. So we are already past the assembly side. It's going to be heard on June 21st in Sacramento. We will have information updated on our website soon, but we're asking everybody to contact the Senate Housing Committee. And then if we pass that, which I'm actually going to knock on every wood that I can find right now, if we pass that committee, then it'll be on the Senate floor, and then we'll be asking everybody to contact your senator. But we need everybody's support. And what this will do, this will simply just allow them to live in the labor camps year-round so that the kids can finish the school year. So a lot of the things that we do at Food Empowerment Project is we don't just want to tell you about the problems that exist. We want to give you tools to help make a difference. And that, in particular one, is going to make a massively huge difference to so many children. One of the other things, because I'm up here near Sonoma County, is just talking about the fires. I lived up here when the fires were really bad in 2017. So I don't know if any else remembers those horrible fires that took place. What you may not know is that the agriculture industry found a loophole that forced the farm workers to go and pick grapes during those fires that were going on. So even though people were being evacuated, because obviously it wasn't safe for people to live there, they found a loophole that somebody had to take care of the land, so they sent the farm workers in. So again, in Sonoma County, there's a great organization called North Bay Jobs with Justice, and what they've been doing, and maybe it's been in the Press Democrat a lot, but what they've been doing is having the indigenous farm workers, a lot of the farm workers are from Oaxaca, and basically they know how to tend the land, and so they've been using them in Sonoma County to help remove the brush and do things like that, so it's not such a fire hazard in the area. And I should have mentioned that as well, is that a lot of the farm workers that Food Empowerment Project helps are indigenous farm workers. All the ones we help in Santa Maria are indigenous. Their families are from Oaxaca, which is a state in Mexico City. And a lot of them don't speak English and they don't speak Spanish. So when things like COVID happened, when the fires happened, because there's also a lot of Oaxacan farm workers in Sonoma County, you had farm workers who were paralyzed because they did not know what they were supposed to do. They did not have access to the information because it wasn't in a language that they could understand. So we've been pushing and working with a lot of organizations to try to get more of the indigenous languages for the state of California to start recognizing those languages. Again, these are the people who are feeding all of us. And how dare we act as if they're so disposable? So one of the other areas that when we talk about our food system, Food Empowerment Project brings up chocolate because I know for a lot of people it feels like a necessity, but it's a luxury. We don't really need it. It just feels like it. And what happens for chocolate? Why, if any of you have heard that there's issues with chocolate, and I appreciate Hope always making sure that her events have Food Empowerment Project recommended chocolate. So what's happening is in countries like Western Africa and Brazil, you have children who are working in the chocolate industry. And this little boy, that bag can get up to 100 pounds. And if he doesn't move fast enough, he's beaten. These children are locked in at night sometimes. They try to escape, they're beaten. There have been stories of formerly enslaved children talking about having the bottoms of their feet cut open to prevent them from running away. So the children get there in a variety of ways. Sometimes they're stolen from marketplaces. Sometimes they're sold into it by a family member. Sometimes the family is having them go off to do this work because they believe that the kid is going to be able to send money back home, and instead they never see their kids again. This is, you can see the scars on the arms and legs. These kids are actually in a certified farm, rainforest certified farm. Rainforest Alliance. So this is when we're talking about chocolate and we talk about capitalism and what it's doing is it's basically saying that mass production is what matter and lives don't matter, right? You want cheap chocolate? Well, this is how we're going to give it to you. This is how you can get cheap chocolate. Because the thing is that a lot of times people want to talk about like, oh, the farmers are doing it. And this is a quote from a farmer in Brazil who talked about, a lot of times people will say, well, the kids are working with their parents. Well, their parents want them to go to school. Their parents want them to have a life, but the farmers aren't being paid enough. So they have to rely on things like their children or enslaved children in order to have an income to survive. So what Food Empowerment Project did is that we have a list of chocolates we do and do not recommend. If you came by our table, you saw a notebook. That includes the companies that we do and do not recommend. We update this list every single month. The companies, as a vegan organization, the companies have to make at least one vegan chocolate to make our list. And some companies have said to us, well, I'm going to figure out how to make a vegan chocolate so that I can make your list. We've had companies switch suppliers. We've had a number of companies switch suppliers so that they could make our list. We don't go based on certifications. Every single certification has been found to be problematic. There is not one that has not been proven to be bad. So we do not recommend any of them. And we primarily don't recommend companies in Western Africa and Brazil. However, if the companies, I think you were telling us about some chocolate from Sri Lanka, if the people who are growing the cacao pods, they're doing everything that they need for the cacao, and they're based in Western Africa, Brazil, we're going to recommend them because they are the owners and they are the ones getting the profit. Because the way that it is right now, it's the Western countries that are profiting off of these other people. So our chocolate list, get here. We have a free app. If you go to our table, you can see a little QR code. You could download the app. It's free. Again, we update it every month, but we also have it on our website if people aren't able to, if you don't have a smartphone. But we do have a full list on our website, and again, we update it every single month. If there's a company that you like that's not on the list, you can email us, or if you're using the app, if you type it into the app and it doesn't come up, there's a place for you to email us the company name, and we'll look into the company. And I can tell you more if people are interested how we go about creating our list. But basically, we have it so we tell you if we recommend them, we don't recommend them, and if we don't, why we don't recommend them. So the last area when we talk about our food supply, how it's grown, other aspects globally as well about our food, we want to look closer to home as well and what's happening when it comes to equity and justice when it comes to our food. And Food Empowerment Project uses the term food apartheid to refer to something that most people probably have heard of called food deserts, lack of access to healthy food. And food apartheid is more accurate because food apartheid is created by racism. It's created by discrimination. And I'm going to show you all in Marin, if you can see here where it talks about Marin City having the least access to healthy food. And Marin City also has the largest black population in Marin County.
There are black people in Marin County?
Marin City, that's where Tupac's from. So, when we talk about this, this is the stark reality for many black, brown, and indigenous people in this country, is that the access to healthy food is non-existent. This is why we really want to encourage people who are vegan not to say things like, it's easy to be vegan, because it is not easy for everybody to be vegan. And we need to accept that fact. It doesn't negate anything that's happening to the animals to say that. What it's doing is showing people we live in the real world, and we don't live in this entitled, privileged bubble where we say that it's easy for anybody to go vegan. So this is also a community that I'm hoping we'll work in at some point. Alpa is a farm worker community. It is off, I think, the 99, and once you get off the 99, it's like the GPS doesn't even work anymore. So this is a farm worker community. On the left is the Alpa Grocery. That is a converted gym. It's a gymnasium that they converted into a grocery store. And the right-hand side is the only produce that was available in that grocery store. The next closest grocery store to them is a half an hour away, and that's a, what's it called? It has a little song. Abby, there's one in Petaluma. Grocery outlet, thank you. The grocery outlets. Which again, if you've ever been to a grocery outlet, you know you can't grocery shop to a list off grocery outlet because you never know what they're gonna have. But that's what communities are getting now is grocery outlets, and which is great, right? At least they have produce and they have fresh food. But again, it's not a practical solution. In these communities where food apartheid exists, they have the highest rates of dietary diseases because simply they don't have same access to healthy foods, whether it be fruits or vegetables. So Food Empowerment Project, we did our work in Santa Clara County when we first got started looking at Silicon Valley. Santa Clara County used to be called the Valley of Heart's Delight. That's where Cesar Chavez got his organizing start, and I'm sure many of you know Cesar Chavez was a vegan. It's where he got his organizing start because there's so many orchards there. It's also Silicon Valley, where Adobe is, Facebook is, all these companies are, and so I wanted to see, is this a problem in this incredibly wealthy community? And we surveyed every establishment that had food and found out, sure enough, that organic food was almost non-existent in the lower income areas. We also did surveying on meat and dairy alternatives. Obviously, we did it for the animals, but we also did it because we know diets higher in fruits and vegetables is better for your health. We also know that what we call, a lot of black, brown, and indigenous people are what a lot of people call lactose intolerant, which we call lactose normal. And we call it lactose normal for two reasons. One is because we don't think it's normal that anybody drinks the milk of another species, but also because too many times the onus is put on Black, brown, and indigenous people as if there's something wrong with us that we can't digest milk. For some of us, for my ancestors, I'm a very proud Mexican, and my ancestors are indigenous to the Americas. Well, you know, Columbus brought cows over on a second voyage. That wasn't something that my ancestors consumed. That is why consuming dairy is very difficult for many of our bodies. It's a product of colonization. It is a legacy of colonization that still exists. So we kind of want to turn it on its head and say, don't say there's something wrong with us. That's a, you know, we're talking more about, you know, for my people, it's a product of colonization. For other peoples, it's a part of enslaved people being brought to the United States. For other people, it's imperialism that are going into places like China and trying to push dairy on them. So, you know, dairy is, we have booklets out front where we talk about it being a product of colonization. And so that's another reason why it's really important when we look at it, communities that are most impacted by lack of access to healthy foods, that why is it something that like milk, that's what's available to them, which is actually making them sick and not available, are the plant-based milks that's better for them. To kind of highlight our point, we actually have a billboard up right now at UCLA. So this is up at UCLA right now. We hope to put more up. This billboard cost us about $20,000 to put up, but we're hoping to get more billboards put up, and it directs people directly to our website, and they can download our booklets for free. So the other thing we did in doing this work was we started to make an assessment between the difference between grocery stores. I shouldn't say we didn't do it intentionally. What happened was we realized that a lot of the places that were being called grocery stores were actually liquor stores and convenience stores. And what we found was that it's because the NAICS, which is how people identify themselves, is actually voluntary. They decide how they want to be defined. So a liquor store could say, I want to be defined as a grocery store, so I can get a permit so we don't have two liquor stores across the street from each other. This is very prevalent in San Jose. I hadn't seen it much in Sonoma County, but in San Jose, you can see two liquor stores across the street from each other quite regularly. We followed up after this, and we did focus groups in the most impacted community, because what we want to make sure is that a lot of times well-intentioned government officials and corporations will go into communities and tell communities what they need instead of listening to the community about what they want and what will work for them. We did this is our report that we came out, and what was interesting is we found out that a lot of the people, at least in San Jose, their kids were actually vegan. They just didn't have access to fresh fruits and fresh vegetables for their kids. We also learned that one of the biggest barriers for people eating healthy wasn't proximity, which if you've heard the term food desert notates proximity. It was actually they couldn't afford it. So that's why Food Empowerment Project started working on the living wage campaigns. And we worked hard in Petaluma on the living wage campaign there. But you know, you can't expect prices to go down if the people aren't being paid well, right? So if we want good food and we want people to be paid well and we want everybody to eat healthy food, we have to create equity. We have to have living wages for people. That's fast food workers, grocery store workers, city workers, federal workers, state workers. It doesn't matter, vegan or not. If we want people to be able to go vegan, they're not going to be able to go vegan if they don't have the money to buy the food. So I feel like if vegans really want people to go vegan, then fight for living wages, because people can't afford it otherwise. And that's not saying, oh, veganism is so expensive, but it kind of is, because sometimes fruits and vegetables can cost more than, ground beef. And I put beef in quotes because we know that's a cow. The other barrier that people experienced was a lot of them were immigrants, and they ate healthier in the countries that they were in than when they moved to the United States. We found a similar situation when we did our work, in Vallejo. If you know Vallejo, I know somebody here said they came to one of our events in Vallejo. We did a lot of work in Vallejo. Found a very, very similar situation. Same thing about immigrants, same thing about the cost. There you had a problem in total, though, on access to healthy foods. They just really don't have a lot of grocery stores or places for people to get healthy food. We did 7 focus groups in Vallejo, and that's where we found out the same thing. One of the interesting things that we found out was that Safeway grocery store has a downtown location, and they closed that location and they relocated a couple miles away. And when they left that location, they put what's called a restrictive deed on that property, preventing any other grocery store from moving in for 15 years. That has since been lifted in a grocery outlets there. But we found out in doing this work that they have these restrictive deeds that are up to 30 years, 60 years, all over the United States. So we have a petition on our website that we ask people to sign asking Safeway to stop this practice that's literally hurting the health of communities. Contrary to what they say about being a good neighbor, they are hurting neighbors. What we encourage, I'll go back. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm watching everybody. So all of you sleeping, I know. Do you get it? Okay, cool. So when we talk about solutions to this, one of the things we talk about is growing your own food, right? Because the capitalist system has never existed to benefit Black, brown, and indigenous people. In fact, it's benefited off of our sweat and our blood and our tears. So if we want a system that's truly just for everybody, the best thing to do is to grow your own food and be off of a system that harms. Even you speak of miles when food transports and things like that. However, somebody like me, who's only ever lived in apartments my whole life, that's not an option. So we really strongly encourage people to support worker-owned cooperatives. Now, all cooperatives are good. The difference with worker-owned cooperatives is that workers are the owners, and they're the ones making the decisions about their profits and how it is that they want to help the community. So here at Mandela Grocery, which is in Oakland, they made the decision to, not profit at all for the first several years and put all the money back in the community. Eventually, they decided they would get some money from it, and Adriana was able to buy a car. They also made sure that they always have 50% off for seniors on produce. That's just how it is every day that you go in. So they're able to give back to the community. So as I'm wrapping up, I wanted to mention a campaign that maybe some of you have heard from, which is our campaign against Amy's Kitchen, where the workers at Amy's Kitchen in Santa Rosa and San Jose were treated very horribly by the company. We have been in talks with Amy's, with the workers, and we hope to be making an announcement soon on where things are at with that. So this is the first place I'm announcing that. So we're hopeful. We're super hopeful. We're hopeful for the workers. So quickly on the what you can do. Go vegan. Saying again, if you have access to healthy foods and you don't want to hurt animals. Shop with care. Try not to support corporations that violate human and animal rights. We have information on our website that includes information on companies like Nestle, Coca-Cola, Monsanto. Lend your voices to the needs of the farm workers. Right now is a perfect time with our legislation that we have up. Choose organic. Try to be organic. Now, organic doesn't mean that the farm workers are treated better, but it means they're not being exposed to toxic chemicals, and that is better. And we know it's expensive, so just do it when you can. Use ethical chocolate. Again, please try to use our list. Think outside the bottle. It seems really basic, but we got to remember this stuff, right? It's not buying single-use plastic water bottles. Bring your own reusables. Buy local. When you go to the farmers markets, try to support the Black, brown farmers because they have more barriers in being able to become farmers than others do. Support living wages. We have information on bananas, coffee, palm oil, wine. We just added avocados and tea. So I know it's like, oh God, what are you telling me? I can't do that. Well, kind of. But we do try to help you out, right? Like with our chocolate list. So for bananas, there's only a couple bananas we recommend. Bananas are really, really bad fruit. It's very tasty. But, we recommend 2 companies. We try to give you one that is our best, which is Equal Exchange. The second one is just more available, and we'd rather you buy that than Chiquita, which is called Grow. So if you've seen Grow. If you live in Sonoma County, Oliver's has Equal Exchange stuff. Coffee, we really tell you to kind of try to reduce. which is not going to make you happy, but we do have some coffee companies that we recommend. Palm oil, doing your best to try to not to consume it. Wine, we have a list. Avocados, we really tell you just try to stick to California avocados. And tea, not buying tea from India. And then, yeah. Try and talk about these issues. A lot of people don't think about these things, even though people eat several times a day. Fill out comment cards. Use your voice. Use your voice as much as possible. Get involved. We have a monthly newsletter where you can sign up to and just share the word. We have more literature outside. We also have these outside. We have vegan Mexican food website, English and in Spanish, vegan Filipino food, which is in English and Tagalog, vegan Lao food, which is in English and in Lao, and vegan Chinese food, which is in English and simplified Chinese. And then we have all the booklets as well outside. Vegan Mexican food is in English and in Spanish, and vegan Filipino food's in English and Tagalog. The rest are in English only. And we have vegan soul food coming out later this month. And then after that is vegan Indian food. And just so you know that these sites, we're not just like picking different people's cultures. These are who make up our organization. So I'm Mexican, my colleague Alejandra is Mexican, one of my former colleagues, Filipina. We have a board member who's Lao, a board member's Chinese, black board member, but black staff members too, and a new board member who was actually our former executive director, who's Indian. So we try to do that to reflect, so it's more authentic. It's about ourselves, it's about our families, it's about our culture, it's about what we want to share with others about being vegan. I mentioned earlier we have our free embodiment of the dairy industry coming up. It's a free seminar hosted by Kennedy, who is our youth coordinator, collective member. And then we're having Dr. Claudia Serrato speak, and she's going to be talking about colonization in the dairy industry. Giovanni is the dairy worker that we mentioned. Shayna Sadai is a climate scientist who's going to be talking about the climate impacts of the dairy industry. And Sheila is has done work with cows. She'll be speaking in that regard. And then we also have, if for any of you know young people who are into zines and stuff, we do have a youth zine that we're putting together, I think up through college age, if anybody knows any. So, and then this is how to reach us. I want to say, you know, again, I want to thank Hope for having me. It's a different kind of talk in a vegan environment because it's talking about the animals, but it's all talking about food. It's all talking about, you know, our work is trying to show how all of these issues are connected. And we are so much stronger when we bond together than we separate each other out. And these issues are all bonded by the same threads of oppression and exploitation and capitalism. They all are. And the best thing we can do is fight them all together. It doesn't mean drop what you're doing for the animals. It doesn't mean anything like that. It just means don't ignore these other issues. Let's not pretend. You know, let's say, yeah, these exist and I agree with you, but, you know, here, I want to talk to you about this. You know, let's not say it's easy for people to go vegan when you don't know what their family situation is like, if it really would be easy for that person. So, you know, again, we eat several times a day. That's a privilege. Some people don't even get that. And I strongly feel we need to use, trying not to feel overwhelmed by this, but looking at it more as an opportunity to help make a difference in the lives of human and non-human animals locally and globally, and also for ourselves. You know, we use the term eat your ethics, and making sure that everything you put in your mouth is something that you believe in and not something that you're ashamed of. So, thank you.